everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here. It's Sunday afternoon, leaving the office, about to go meet baby and do some QT. And I'm sitting here, and as I'm preparing my plans for the week, and I'm going over all the things that need to be done, and I'm reviewing notes from sessions with my clients. And I get triggered, not in an emotional sense, but in a sense of an epiphany of conglomerate awareness. In other words, what I'm saying is there's so many things that I am engaged in the sense of awareness and learning and becoming better equipped to help people in general, but definitely my people. And sometimes I get these epiphanies where all of these different categories and situations, people's dealings in finance and relationships and in children's issues and all these different things that I deal with, right? And there's these epiphanies that come together where it all comes together and it's this big, huge bam. And I'm sitting up and I'm thinking about the conversation that we had on the teachers on yesterday morning with Dr. Cleet Ladd and the work he's doing in Indianapolis and socialization, which is a major passion of mine with young black boys through the Black Men Lead Rite of Passage initiative. And Dr. Cleet is doing something similar in the Indianapolis area. And so my goal is to connect with more guys like him and to universalize the rite of passage for young black boys. But that's a small portion of what's going on. So I started to say, man, what's the biggest problem I have, regardless to what area I'm working in underperformance, in underachievement, in the lack of doing it, and how does it equate to what's going on in the black community? Okay, and without question, the biggest impediment to advancing oneself isn't all of the obstacles that are out there. It is the fear of what one does not know. It is the fear of failure, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of who's behind the obstacles, the fear of the white man, the fear of institutions. All of that. Fear paralyzes more people than any other thing under the sun. Being afraid to take action, being afraid to put skin in the game, being afraid to really find out just how awesome you are. The idea of playing it safe so that you don't have to experience the disappointment of failure keeps so many people behind. So how does that apply to the black experience? Now that's the question. We could talk about it all day long. We could talk about it in general terms. We could talk about it in the many ways that I work with my clients. But I want to talk about it specifically, how it impacts us. It starts with how we deal with our youth. We have trained our youth to, first of all, be afraid. They have a natural inbred fear, almost. It starts out early. They watch us afraid. I watched my great-grandparents, as awesome as my grandfather was and as resilient as my great-grandmother was. I watched them when it came time, when there was an opportunity to strike a blow to the establishment, they backed down. You don't sue the city. You don't sue. You got a right to sue the city right now, and it could change your life forever. No, you don't sue. And it was a fear. It was a fear ingrained in them way before I was ever even thought of. It was a fear that they got as a child, looking at what they were facing. And the truth of the matter is they were facing some pretty daunting things. They grew up, he was born in 1909, she was born in 1917, right in the midst of Jim Crow, when they were lynching black people in the South. Okay, I get that. But here's the problem. One of the components of being able to enslave the minds of people is terror. It is the use of fear to sit up and restrict movement based off of what moving outside of the bounds that have been established for you will do. So you never venture outside of the box because you're afraid of the consequences of venturing outside of the box. Although deep down inside, you know that outside of the box is the answer to your solution. The answer to your situation, the solutions to your problems. But you're not going to venture outside the box. Why? It gets even deeper. The battle and the war for the future of this race is being waged in the minds of our youth. And it's being waged from multiple fronts. Fear is going to be a problem, but also misinformation, misdirection, and the erroneous construction of a paradigm that does not serve the interest of themselves. In other words, they literally are being exposed to information that floods the channels of their minds and convinces them to do things that do not serve them, convincing them to be focused on things that do not serve them, convince them to move exactly in diametric opposition to the very things they need to empower themselves. There can be no achievement of power in the presence of fear. There can be no achievement of power when you don't even understand who you are and what you need. There can be no achievement of power when you have been convinced to pursue the things that are at the core of your own destruction. It is the battle for the black mind, and it starts with our children, and we are failing them. We're failing them because in part because we're actually assisting the darkness that seeks to assume or consume their minds. We're assisting by teaching them to be afraid. We're assisting the system by promoting compliance to narrow-minded constructs. We are assisting the system in the idea that, you only are able to do this. We buy into the limitations set by the system, so we don't challenge them, and we don't teach our children to challenge them. We are assisting them by them watching us not live out our lives at the full level of our potential, by not sitting up and stepping out and speaking up and being who we are, by cowering and being compliant to a system that does not serve us, by acquiescing to the demands to be less than who we truly are, so that others in our environment and around us will feel comfortable. We consistently bombard their minds with mediocrity and average because we don't want to dare step out. And some of it is done because we don't want to see our kids hurt. We don't want to see our kids disappointed. So we dare them not to thrive for something excellent. We dare them not to thrive for something extraordinary. We dare them not to thrive for that phenomenal thing that was birthed in them and that they have early in life. We literally strangle it out of them by the time they're 7 or 8 years old, because we don't want them going out into a world that's not designed for them and experiencing what we experience. But the only way they break that hold, the only way that their children and their grandchildren live a better life than they live, is if they sit up and change the narrative. And you are responsible for getting these kids to change the narrative. You can't constantly sit up and say that the children are the future, but then not value the children enough to protect the children, not value the children enough to protect their most valuable asset. And their most valuable asset, despite it constantly being said over the course of your life that time is most valuable, no, your mind is your most valuable asset. You can have all the time in the world, and if you don't have your mind, it means absolutely nothing. Your mind is your most valuable asset. Your mind is the most powerful force in the universe. Your mind has very few limitations, but you have given it many by limiting how you think, limiting what you expect, limiting how you demand yourself, and you have literally caged your mind. And now you are allowing the enemy to cage the minds of your children, but you're saying the children are the future. They cannot be the future with a caged mind. They cannot be a future with erroneous concepts, ideas ingrained and inculcated into their psyche that work against them. The responsibility of a parent is not simply to birth a child and provide for the child. The responsibility of the parent is to birth the child and prepare the child. That's what education is. It is the empowerment and the preparation of a child to grow up and go out into a world that is inherently hostile toward it, and not only compete but thrive and win. And how does that happen? You've got to unleash the mind. You got to literally sit up and you've got to tell that child that there's absolutely nothing they can't do. You got to tell that child, yes, life is going to be hard. So don't balk when you run into adversity. Don't fold when you run into disappointment, and don't become discouraged when you run into delay. Understand that at the core of who you are, you can achieve anything. Now, there are going to be some people who won't like you. There'll be some people who will literally work against you. You cannot allow that to influence you. You are going to get scraped up. You're going to have some bumps. You're going to have some bruises. That's a part of the game. Don't let that discourage you or deter you. Your focus has to be on finishing something great. Great is your destiny. Even those of us who have achieved some semblance of success are probably the worst culprits of preparing our kids and not preparing our kids and not guarding their minds. Why? Because we think we can protect them with our success. We haven't gotten that for a long where we can literally offer our kids privilege. We don't have that kind of power yet. So what we have to do is actually set up one of the things that I've heard, and you know, I'm not a fan of everything this person says or does, but one of the things that I definitely agree on with is it was reported that Shaq challenges all of his children to be their own person and do their own thing and become something within themselves. And he tells them all the time, you're not rich, I'm rich. Now, if I die, you might become rich, but until then, you got to make something happen in your life. Now, I'm going to be behind you, and I'm going to underwrite what you want to do, but you got to go out there and make it happen. You got to wake up every day and go grind. My wealth doesn't allow you an opportunity to be lazy. That's what we've got to do for those that have achieved a certain level of success. We've got to go out there and challenge our kids to actually be even more on top of their game. Why? Because they've got a greater opportunity. You know, it's easy when you ain't got nothing to sit up and tell your kids, if you want it, you're going to have to go get it because I don't have it to give it to you. But you can't sit up and send them out there like that if you don't already fill their minds with the idea that there's no way in the world they're going to succeed. Am I sitting up and say, lie to them and act like that those obstacles don't exist? No, but you better tell them they're bad enough, big enough, strong enough, and smart enough to overcome it. Understanding and knowing what you're facing isn't to build an excuse for not facing it. It's to prepare you to not only face it, but destroy it, to conquer it, to overcome it. That's what we're going to have to be able to do. You know, I sit up and I'm looking at this and I'm like, the battle for the mind is where the war is being waged. And we're losing that battle. If we lose that battle, we lose. We've got to start protecting the mind of our children. We've got to start empowering the minds of our children. We've got to start unleashing the minds of our children. You can talk about so many other things, but when I sit up and I look at the little boys we work with, and I look at the young men we work with, and I look at the young women that Marion invests so much in, that have so much respect for her, it's about empowering them. It's about unleashing them. It's about telling them that they don't have to mortgage their future to pay for their past for the older ones. It's about telling them that time has a way of being redemptive when you invest in it wisely. And when you invest in it wisely, that means freeing your mind, empowering your mind, growing mentally, growing emotionally, and becoming something that simply cannot be stopped. That's what I'm challenging every last one of us to do, is to grow at that level, to be that strong, to be that powerful. It begins with us doing exactly what we need to do with our children. And I'm going to do as much as I can with children in the community. It doesn't stop with mine. I'm going to do as much as I can, but I'm challenging everyone. We've got work to do. All right, I'm out of here. I got to run a quick errand. I'm going to meet baby. But look, hey, we've got work to do. Show some love, show some support the work we do at the Odyssey Project, including Black Men Lead and Restoring Ghettos Forgotten Daughters, and all the other things that we do there, including research. Go to the description box and it'll tell you just how you can support us. On that note, I'm out here. You guys have an unbelievable day. I'm